Most people chase strength in simple, predictable ways. But Mishima approached it like a scholar approaches a forbidden text, sensing that steel held a truth the mind could not reach alone. This is where that revelation first touched him, quiet and severe as a blade in morning light. Excerpt: Sun and Steel. On that day began my close relationship with steel that was to last for 10 years to come. The nature of this steel is odd. I found that as I increased its weight little by little, the effect was like a pair of scales. The bulk of muscles placed, as it were, on the other pan increased proportionately, as though the steel had a duty to maintain a strict balance between the two. Little by little, moreover, the properties of my muscles came increasingly to resemble those of the steel. This slow development, I found, was remarkably similar to the process of education, which remodels the brain intellectually by feeding it with progressively more difficult matter. And since there was always the vision of a classical ideal of the body to serve as a model and an ultimate goal, the process closely resembled the classical ideal of education. And yet, which of the two was it that really resembled the other? Was I not already using words in my attempt to imitate the classical physical type? For me, beauty is always retreating from one's grasp. The only thing I consider important is what existed once, or ought to have existed. By its subtle, infinitely varied operation, the steel restored the classical balance that the body had begun to lose, reinstating it in its natural form, the form that it should have had all along. The groups of muscles that have become virtually unnecessary in modern life, though still a vital element of a man's body, are obviously pointless from a practical point of view. And bulging muscles are as unnecessary as a classical education is to the majority of practical men. Muscles have gradually become something akin to classical Greek. To revive the dead language, the discipline of the steel was required. To change the silence of death into the eloquence of life, the aid of steel was essential. The steel faithfully taught me the correspondence between the spirit and the body. Thus, feeble emotions, it seemed to me, corresponded to flaccid muscles, sentimentality to a sagging stomach, and over-impressionability to an oversensitive white skin. Bulging muscles, a taut stomach, and a tough skin, I reasoned, would correspond respectively to an intrepid fighting spirit, the power of dispassionate intellectual judgment, and a robust disposition. I hasten to point out here that I do not believe ordinary people to be like this. Even my own scanty experience is enough to furnish me with innumerable examples of timid minds encased within bulging muscles. Yet, as I have already pointed out, words for me came before the flesh, so that intrepidity, dispassionateness, robustness, and all those emblems of moral character summed up by words needed to manifest themselves in outward bodily tokens. For that reason, I told myself, I ought to endow myself with the physical characteristics in question as a kind of educative process. End of excerpt, Sun and Steel. What he hints at here is not exercise, but metamorphosis, a crossing of thresholds where the body becomes a manuscript, rewritten through effort and clarified through pain. The suggestion is unsettling, that virtues we treat as abstract, even poetic, may demand a physical form, and that a person who reshapes the flesh may, in time, reshape the self. Agree or disagree, Mishima confronts us with a question few dare ask. What part of our nature remains dormant simply because it has never been disciplined into life? If you seek voices that blur the line between philosophy and flesh, stay for the next excerpt. The library is open. Thanks for watching. Follow Literary Exile for daily echoes from the classics who saw the truth behind the veil of society. You'll find my library in the description. Have a seat, choose a book, and join the Literary Exile.